So it seems next to impossible that the Senior Bowl is already behind us, but given that it is, we need to talk about some individuals that could have massively raised their draft stock throughout this week. But before we do, as always, y'all know the drill. I want to hear from you. Hop down to the comments, Y for yes, N for no. Do you believe the Senior Bowl affords these players an opportunity to improve their draft stock, or let me know what you're thinking? If you are new to the channel, be sure to subscribe. Hit that bell notification. I do constant college football content. You don't want to miss any of it, and if you enjoy the content, like and comment down below. Those interactions may seem small, but they are massive to content creators such as myself in both getting picked up and maintained by the YouTube algorithm. But having said all of that, let's hop right into this, and we are going to start with Brian Robinson Jr., the running back out of Alabama. Because even though Brian Robinson may not have had the biggest numbers game during the actual Senior Bowl, it's about everything the week offered. And that's where Brian Robinson, I think, excelled. Because Robinson was an individual who was voted as running back of the week by his peers, by defenders that he was going up against in drills. And I think that says a lot, that when you can impress your peers, that means you're doing something right. Those are the people that are actually going out there and grinding with you and seeing firsthand what you're all about and what you're capable of. Robinson is an intriguing running back because he's a little bit of an old school back. He's got the ability to run you straight over. He's got a bit more speed than I think people realize. He had a really solid year for the Crimson Tide and showed what kind of heart he has, because there were several games where he was injured, but he was still playing and playing at a high level. So I think Brian Robinson is an individual that already kind of had scouts' attention before this game, because I think he can be a really big value pick in this NFL draft. Someone's going to get him and be over the moon with the type of player they're going to be able to get. But going into the Senior Bowl and impressing your peers in the way that he did, I think is only going to be a massive net positive. And furthermore, there's that clip that's going around of him delivering a fantastic block. That's the type of stuff that's going to separate Brian Robinson come the draft. So awesome to see that the peers he went up against respected what he was about, ultimately voted running back of the week. This is a name we have to watch out for, because I really do think he has a lot of ability that could be massively undervalued until it's too late. The next name on this list, we couldn't put together a top 5 list without some offensive line, and Zion Johnson from Boston College. This is someone who's got a lot of versatility, and according to reports, was playing center through some of his time during the Senior Bowl practices. If you have the ability to play tackle and center and then work at the ability to try and gain an understanding at center, that's something that's going to impress NFL teams. And Zion Johnson already had an impressive college career. He was someone who was going to be on the forefront of scouts' minds, regardless of what he did during the Senior Bowl. But whenever you're able to go to the Senior Bowl and impress there on top of your impressive college career, this is now an individual we must think about heading into the draft. Boston College has the ability that, though the ACC may not be the deepest conference in the nation, they do play Clemson. So he's got some certified film out there for scouts to be able to take a look at, because Clemson recruited that defensive line as well as anybody in the nation. I mean, let's be honest. When we're talking about Clemson's defenses, we point to that defensive line and they were always sensational. So great on Zion Johnson. The next individual we need to talk about is Travis Jones, a defensive tackle from Connecticut. And first and foremost, it really is a disservice that I'm only doing 5, because there are so many defensive tackles we could talk about that were impressive this week, whether we're talking Phidarian Mathis, Travis Jones, or an individual we're going to get to a little bit later. A lot of these guys on the front had an impressive day, and as such, this is a draft where there's a lot of talent on the front of the defensive line. Because of that, Travis Jones is an individual that could be a massive value pick when we look at the draft in a year or two. What I mean when I say that is he's someone who could go in the second round. But whenever we look from 1 or 2 years from now, we're looking at the production these guys have put up in the NFL, and we're asking ourselves, how in the world did Travis Jones slip? Well, the answer is simple. It's that there's so much talent up front on the defensive side of this draft that Travis Jones could go later in the draft and be one of the value picks of the entire draft. Jones from Connecticut had a stellar outing during the Senior Bowl. He's a name we must keep on our mind. He's someone I think is going to be making waves, and I really think he improved his draft stock during the week at the Senior Bowl. The next person we need to talk about is Jake Ferguson, the tight end from Wisconsin, and Ferguson had a great day during the actual event. This is someone who brings a lot to the table. He's a good blocker. There were some questions about how he is as an outright receiving threat, but I think a lot of that was put to bed, or at least began to be put to bed during the Senior Bowl, because he had a really good performance. That's the type of thing that can really separate where you're drafted during this part of the process. An individual that already shows, okay, well, he can block from the tight end position, but now we see him in a different environment have success as a receiving threat. Tight ends are such a mismatch right now on all levels of football that getting a guy that can block and be successful in the passing game just creates so much opportunities for modern offenses to be able to create mismatches, but also to be able to afford yourself an extra blocker. The tight end position is one that always has fascinated me because of how much they allow an offense to do, and Jake Ferguson is a name that I think has moved up some scouts' boards, and deservedly so. It's going to be very interesting to see where he's ultimately taken. But finally, and certainly not least, we need to talk about the MVP of the entire Senior Bowl, Perrion Winfrey, the defensive tackle out of Oklahoma, because Perrion Winfrey had a massive week and had a huge game during the Senior Bowl in and of itself. Notching 2 sacks, 3 tackles for loss, he was a menace on the football field, and it wasn't just relegated to the game. Winfrey showed out throughout the entire week. This is a player that has got tons of ability. That's never been the question with Perrion Winfrey. He put together a really solid season. He had a lot of good reps on film, and then he goes to the Senior Bowl and does this. And this kind of highlights what I was talking about earlier when I was talking about the depth at the defensive front position groups in this draft. There's a lot of impressive names, and Perrion Winfrey was a name that was probably teetering on that list because of what he was able to do during the season, then goes out to the Senior Bowl, does this. This is an individual, it is going to be very interesting to see where he ends up on scouts' draft boards because of this performance. I think this has elevated him to a massive degree. And if you want to talk about someone whose stock really rose, in my opinion, Perrion Winfrey might be the name we need to look at because he had a massive game, and that's awesome for the young man. But with all that being said, very interested in hearing from y'all. I always love this right here. The draft has probably been my favorite thing NFL related. As much as I love the NFL because I have such a deep love for college football, I absolutely love the draft. So a game such as the Senior Bowl that can allow these guys their last opportunity to really put tangible film out there to increase their draft stock is something I'm very intrigued by. So hop down to the comments, let me know what you thought. That's it. See ya.